J.K. Rowling has gotten into trouble with the left on the internet again. How aware of this sort of stuff are you?
Well, I haven't followed the J.K. Rowling story in any great detail. I was a sort of anti-J.K. Rowling person because she spoke out against Brexit, and I was very pro-Brexit.
As many of us were back in the day.
But I really like the way, not just her, but a lot of high-powered intellectual women have come together, and there's this alliance, and it's across politics, really. It's left and right, libertarian and maybe not so authoritarian, but there's this sort of coming together of women to defend their status and defend their position. And J.K. Rowling's, for whatever reason, is one of the figureheads of it. And all I say is good luck to her.
Yeah, that's a great position to take on it. I would say I like the framing of the high-powered intellectual women coming and actually being independent women, doing what they want to. You know, always good by me. But what you're talking about,
I think they've got the support. Not only, I was going to say tacit support, but it's not that tacit. But they've got the support of a lot of men. But I think this is a particular battle that, in order to win it, I think women are going to have to be the ones that go over the top, so to speak,
yes,
which is what they're doing.
There is a contingent of women who are trying to stick to reality, as I would say it, and are definitely coming to the forefront, sticking up for themselves, which I respect massively. But what she's got into trouble for this time is, of course, something as innocuous as meeting up with all of those other high-powered, intelligent women and going for lunch. And being photographed online, going for lunch with all of her friends, which is now a crime of the highest order. Before I go any further, I just want to throw...
It's like going to lunch with Jordan Peterson, Andy and Go, Carl Benjamin, me, Leo Kearse, and
oh, can you imagine the outrage? That would be terrible. But before we go any further, just want to bring everybody's attention to this recent article from Thomas. It's part of our Deep Think series where we go a little bit more in-depth on certain subjects, where he's talking about what he sees as his attempt to explain what's going on currently culturally, unlike many who would throw out the postmodern neo-Marxism remark that Jordan Peterson and James Lindsay throw out there. Thomas has a different perspective, saying it's postmodern neo-capitalism, where he's saying that it's... capitalism's fault or partially to blame with this. I've not listened to it yet, but it's Thomas, so it'll be very interesting, and a perspective that you don't often get on these sorts of subjects. So check that out if you're interested. So let's carry on. So this is the image that sparked the initial outrage. As you can see, a number of evil people on the screen.
Is that Suzanne Moore there as well?
Yes, there is J.K. Rowling in the middle. There's Suzanne Moore, Julie Bindel, Joanna Cherry, Rosie Duffield, and a few other people. Basically what you would refer to as, I suppose, feminist dissidents. They've tried to label them all as the TERFs, the trans-exclusionary radical feminists. But as J.K. Rowling has made very clear a number of times, she doesn't actually have much of a problem with trans people in and of themselves, more that they're trying to co-opt the identity of women altogether, and also trying to remove the distinctions between man and women that exist in biological terms and social terms, which...
Yeah, I mean, this whole argument is just got so stupid. Because there are various... Like, I used to have my ex-girlfriend a long time ago was like as hardcore a left-wing a feminist as you would ever get. And one of the things she always used to say is biology is the enemy of the feminist.
It's true.
And there's a certain amount of truth to that because, the fact is women want to have kids, and so that makes them leave the workplace, that sort of biological drive, and all sorts of other examples, men are stronger. And it seems that somehow in this trans row, it's like biology has become the enemy of trans, if you see what I mean.
Yes.
But there's almost like three categories. There's there's the psychological, I suppose, and legal element to this thing of some people feel they weren't born in the wrong bodies and for whatever reason they want to change. Well, that's fine. If you want to do that, that's your business and you go about it. But then there's the sort of the safe space issue when some people are exploiting that privilege to go, for example, to be put in a women's prison rather than a male prison where they then commit rape or for all sorts of, this stupid thing of women in sports. Like, at what point are we going to have a trans boxer?
Oh, well, we've already got there with MMA. Are you aware of the
I
Fallon
wasn't,
Fox?
no.
Fallon Fox is a male-to-female trans person who entered into the Females League of MMA. And while I do believe that she lost a few fights, the people that she fought against said that she hit a hell of a lot harder than any other women they'd ever fought.
It's just wrong.
It is.
It's just wrong. And the I'm just struggling to articulate the yeah. It's when it gets abused. Like it's, as I say, it's fine for an individual to do whatever they like, but it's when it creeps into what should be a safe place for women and now no longer is.
And I think anyone from
and I think all the stuff that's going on with kids, by the way, of trying to persuade kids, that is really bad.
Especially,
and I think a lot of kids just do it because maybe they're slightly lonely, and a lot of kids are slightly lonely and they sort of drift through life and nobody notices them. And then suddenly, if they say they want to be trans, they get a load of attention. I think it's that simple for a lot of kids. Oh, I get attention if I do this, I'm going to be trans. And they don't realise the damage they're doing to their lives.
Yes, the stuff related to the kids is something that we especially are hammering home quite a lot recently, just because of how prevalent it is. And we've actually got a premium podcast that you should check out if you're out there and haven't watched it yet, where we actually examine a Seattle public school curriculum on gender and queerness that goes from kindergarten through to 5th grade. So 5 to 10-year-olds being told that, gender identity is this thing separated from biology. You can be whatever you want. It's just confusing children.
It really is.
Ridiculous.
And also, like I remember when I was a kid, I used to dress up in my mum's clothes. And I think, girls like dressing up as boys and boys like dressing up as girls. It's sort of part of being a kid. And men, the drag queen, it's like one of the great traditions of comic theatre. It's been around for hundreds of years. It's blokes dressing up as women. It's normal, if you see what I mean.
Yeah,
for there to be this sort of fluidity.
Yeah,
but doesn't mean you can go to a
contexts.
women's loo or a women's prison and participate in women's sport.
Within certain contexts, yes. And then when you start to get the idea of drag queen story time, where it's like drag queens going and telling stories to children who are like 5 years old, I think many of us are just saying that's just not appropriate.
Yeah, but you go to Panto and you have Widow Twanky and everyone roars with laughter, but they're not indoctrinating the kids.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, getting back to this. So interestingly enough, I think Maya Forstater was the whole reason that J.K. Rowling got kicked off of her initial pedestal that she'd been on with the internet left, of this sort of queen bee of leftism. Because before then, she'd been going on and retconning all of her stories with Harry Potter, saying, "Oh, this person was gay, that person was gay. Here's who was actually having sex with one another," which was just They're kids' stories, Joanne. Please calm down with all this. But then she comes out in support of Maya Forstater, gets cancelled, and they're trying to remove her from her own franchise, essentially. I don't know if you're aware the 10th anniversary was...
yeah, I saw that, yeah.
Well, actually, it was the 20th anniversary, and she wasn't even invited.
Talk about ingratitude.
I know, all of these people whose careers...
It's literally like banning Tolkien from The Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
It's equivalent to that.
And then like Orlando Bloom or anyone else showing up anyway. It's like the only reason you've got a career is because of the story this person wrote.
Orlando Bloom already had a bit of a career, but he's certainly got a boost. But certainly the kids.
Yes.
What's her name? Emma Watson and Daniel Radcliffe and so on, yeah.
Yeah. But as I said, this has got some backlash. Pink News, of course. Are you aware of Pink News?
I'm not, but I'm about to discover
They are a radical queer publication online, and when you say that, we always point out there's the distinction between, say, being gay or a lesbian and being queer, which is, I'm a person who happens to be gay or lesbian, whatever. Queer people make it the entirety of their identity to flaunt themselves as that sexuality rather than build anything else on top of their personality. And this is very much the publication for those types of people.
Just messing with people's heads.
Yeah, everything has to be filtered through this prism. So J.K. Rowling enjoys boozy lunch with anti-trans lobby while thousands march for trans equality. Can you believe the absolute audacity of her to go and have lunch with friends while there are bad things happening in the world? Can you believe that she would do that? So she enjoyed a boozy lunch with a host of anti-trans activists, including members of the lobby group Get the L Out, while thousands protested for trans equality. Although Rowling was once promised her trans followers that she would march with you if you were discriminated against on the basis of being trans, she was nowhere to be seen on the day of the protest. So this seems to be the major complaint they have with this. Oh, you said that you would march with trans people if they were marching. Well, they are marching and you're not doing anything. But she promised that like 2 years ago. And a lot's changed since then. For instance, her being cancelled, receiving many online death threats from people within these lobbies. And also, as I've said before, they've tried to co-opt her own franchise and removed her from it. So I think there's a few things that you could say about, I think it's reasonable that she may not want to support those sorts of people anymore. And also, given that she has received a number of death threats, would she feel safe going into a crowd full of these people who have probably sent death threats to her?
Even if she hadn't had the death threats, when somebody's that rich and that, of that kind of status, and she's only it's not like she's a 6'4" bloke with big muscles.
No, exactly. It's not like she's a trans woman.
There's inevitably going to be safety concerns.
Yeah, no, exactly. And they carry on. Get the Hell Out describes gender-affirming healthcare as a form of misogynist medical abuse against lesbians, which promotes the medical transition of lesbians and pushes harmful drugs and unnecessary medical practices on lesbians' healthy bodies. And so obviously they're approaching it from a very old-school feminist sort of critique of it, but there is a bit of truth to that, especially when you're talking about the younger people transitioning, like we've discussed already. A lot of these people are confused. They've probably got some form of anxiety or something they're dealing with as their hormones change. And also a lot of these people, I think the studies have shown, if they do detransition or fall out of that phase later on in their teen years, they will often end up just being a gay man or a lesbian woman who were confused and presented with these options, and they go, oh, okay, I guess I'm a woman then. A lot of stuff like that. The group also believes that the LGBT community is coercing lesbians to accept penises as female organs and heterosexual intercourse as lesbian sexual practice. Well, that's true. We've had a BBC article from that last year, which was honestly shocking coming from the BBC, where a number of lesbians were saying that they were being pressured by trans women into having sex with them, despite the fact they still had penises, purely because, well, I identify as a woman, you're obviously transphobic. Absolutely ridiculous. We oppose this manipulative ideology and denounce it as a form of rape culture aimed at lesbians as well as a form of conversion therapy. But back in the day, I would have laughed at these sorts of claims of rape culture, but...
I think they're right. I just want to go back. Can I just read that sentence, that previous sentence
out?
out?
Of course.
Because it's just the most amazing sentence. The LGBT community is coercing lesbians to accept penises as female organs and heterosexual intercourse as a lesbian sexual practice. I mean, I'm just sort of shaking my head and going, this is nuts. That's one of the craziest sentences I've ever read.
It's true, though, that certain
I know,
elements...
don't doubt it's true, but that somebody's having to say that.
I know, this is how far we've fallen as a culture in the society, sadly. But they also said that other guests at the lunch party included elected politicians Joanna Cherry and other such people as Rosie Duffield. So they were just very, very angry about this. Rosie Duffield, who they say has made false claims that trans children in the UK are cutting body parts off and rendering themselves completely infertile. Well, Pink News seems to be denying the very existence of the Tavistock Clinic. Are you aware of the Tavistock Clinic?
No.
They are a London-based gender identity-affirming clinic which goes for children, which caters to children as young as 8 and possibly younger as well. I looked up at their page, and it's quite interesting. Yes.
How can parents allow their kids to get involved in this stuff?
It's ridiculous. Here's the page itself that says, if you scroll down a bit, you can go to the actual little bit that I'm talking about here. So they talk about Matt, who doesn't want to talk about his gender or the fact that he was born a girl. This is not helped by his diagnosis of autism and his problems with communicating. He just wants people to accept him. While mum Rachel must grapple with losing her daughter, she must also give consent to 11-year-old Matt hormone blocking drugs to stop him becoming a woman. So an 11-year-old going on puberty blockers that will stop her natural development.
I'm sorry, I've got 4 kids, and one of the things you learn when you have kids is you always think kids end up how you bring them up. But the more kids you have, the more you become a believer in nature rather than nurture, if you see what I mean. A lot of kids are how they are from a really, really young age. And, for example, one of my son's best friends when he was about 3, you knew that kid was going to be gay from about the time he was 2 or 3. You just knew he was going to be gay. And he's now 21 and he is gay. And there was another boy, you could just see that kid was going to be the most sort of alpha male, sport billy, whatever. And it's just, you just see it almost, not quite from the moment they're born, but from very early in their childhood. And I remember when I was 4, one of my best friends was this girl who wanted to be a boy. And she was just what we would call then a tomboy. And she's grown up to be gay. And so, I don't know. I just think this kind of, what kids are going to be is almost probably, a lot of it's determined from when the sperm meets the ovary. It's, probably that early. And this kind of interference and intervention is evil, bad and wrong.
Yes, I agree. And the interesting thing when you talk about like where we can try and track down where it originates from is that we might have more information on that if it weren't for the fact that a lot of the activists who are pushing all of this stuff don't start screeching and protesting and destroying people's property the second that somebody says, I'm going to start looking into this, because they see it as a complete removal of that person's identity if you don't affirm it for them. And that's why you suddenly get people saying that, oh, if we don't do this, it's genociding trans people, which is just absolutely ridiculous.
Do you know what this boils down to? And it's a much bigger thing. Is there seem to be, if you like, two types of people. And there are some who are of a libertarian mindset. They tend to be much more laissez-faire. You know, you look after your own bit of the world and you take care of that, and you know, maybe your family helps you out, whatever. And there's that libertarian mindset which wants to get on with less government, and then there's less state intervention, and then there's this other mindset that at every turn they demand some kind of government action, some kind of government intervention, some kind of government subsidy. And I'm afraid the way the world is at the moment, the Western world, it has been taken over by that mindset. So at every corner of the economy, at every evolution in, every turn of the world, if you like, it keeps, government, and it's democracy is part of the problem, because government has to promise it's going to do this in order to get elected. But there's this constant demand for government intervention, and it's that sort of authoritarian mindset. But I hate to disappoint you people, but the government is not going to solve your problems.
Now you're speaking my language. Democracy is part of the problem. Sorry, I've been reading some Hopper recently, and that really speaks to the anti-statist within me. Because yeah, you're absolutely right. We are surrounded by statists. Every organisation, whether public or private, is infested with statists. And you're right. This isn't how we're going to solve the problem. It needs to be ground up action from
Have you noticed when
community.
They are, and there's a guy called Simon Fanshawe. Gay comedian. He won the Perrier in 1988, I think. And he was one of the founders of Stonewall. And I was talking to him the other day, and he said Stonewall should have just stopped in about 2013. We'd got everything we were fighting for. But in order to exist, Stonewall needed to find new things to fight for. So it's like, so it just found all these ludicrous battles to fight for. And, Stonewall is behind so much of these far left campaign groups.
A lot of government pressure.
And it's, and that's the problem. In order to exist, a lot of these campaign groups have to find new battles once they've won the original battles that they were put into existence for.
Yes, and as you said with democracy, it makes it very, very easy for politicians to latch onto these claims made by increasingly fringe groups, because they tend to be easily pulled by the whims of these small fringe, minority interest groups at the expense of everybody else. Because, like you say, that's kind of how they attach themselves to social causes and win votes.
There's an even deeper philosophy here, which almost goes right back to the beginning of the conversation, which is the difference between natural law and positive law. And this is an argument that the physiocrats had, and I think in the 17th century. But the idea of natural law is things are as they are. And I think a lot of philosophers would say English common law has its roots in natural law. But then you have positive law, which is laws that mankind tries to impose on nature.
Often found through legislation and such.
Yeah, exactly. And this, women are men, women can have penises, is a classic example of natural law and positive law.
It's humankind sort of trying to indulge in its own hubris to change the
but natural law takes priority over positive law.
Yes, that's why it always ends up the
gold would be the money of natural law, whereas fiat money would be, the money of positive law.
Yes, return to the gold standard, absolutely, as if that would happen currently, sadly. But yes, just carrying on.
Might happen quicker than you think, but anyway, we'll come to that. We can come to that if you like.
Yeah, we'll see. But yes, so just to finish off this segment, because we've sort of run over just having an interesting discussion there. So yeah, we do have examples and evidence of trans women trying to pressure lesbians into having sex with them. This was this article from BBC News in October, which of course was highly controversial and got a lot of people asking to take it down. We've also got responses to the original tweet put out, because what do these people have better to do with their day than rage at people? So this is the recent trans rights, because trans people apparently don't have the rights that the rest of us do. Name one, please. But this trans rights protest, as if I would expect J.K. Rowling to wade out into that and feel safe. Let's be perfectly honest. We've got other people commenting on it, so feels exactly right that thousands of people were protesting against trans conversion on the streets, while the gender critical movement were having a small posh get together with J.K. Rowling. They were having a meal. They were having a nice lunch.
Oh man, one of the greatest pleasures in life is to share a meal with people who share a similar worldview to you. It is one of the great pleasures, particularly if you don't get a chance to see them very often. You meet up, they're having their lives, they've arrived at similar conclusions to you. It is one of the great pleasures to feast with such people, and good luck to her.
It absolutely is. But yes, that says a lot about what's happening here. Yes, it does. I just don't think it's saying what you want it to, Aidan. We've got other people. So we've got the classic Sean, a YouTuber, saying J.K. Rowling hanging out with these people is evil because... They're automatically calling for discrimination. We've got people saying that they are being tortured, that apparently trans people are being tortured through the... we're going to exclude trans people from a ban on torture. No, that's not what's happening. The UK government is banning conversion therapy, excluding trans conversion therapy for some reason. Now, personally, I don't think the government should be doing this at all, because a lot of the conversion therapy with gay and lesbian people is completely opt-in, voluntary, no one's being forced into it. And the question of whether it works or not is dubious at best. And so the government shouldn't really be stepping into it.
Of course it shouldn't. Do you think if Ernest Bevan saw NHS money being spent on this kind of stuff, he'd turn into a radical far-right,
Yes,
no NHS private welfare kind of guy.
If only. But we've also got Rosie Jones saying that she had a mad, angry cry about the photos of J.K. Rowling. Do you have nothing better to do with it?
How is it hateful to go and have lunch?
I know, it's obvious nonsense as well. Nobody's seeing a picture of J.K. Rowling and just bursting out in tears, but then again, actually...
Wait a minute, who's attacking who?
Maybe, well, this has always been the question. J.K. Rowling comes out and says, actually, I believe women are women. The trans community goes, you're attacking us, and then tries to deplatform her from her own franchise, get everyone to hate her. So that question has always been... I just wanted to draw people's attention as well to the fact that there was a recent article published with the Washington Post, which shocked me and kind of indicates that there may be a shifting of the general opinion, or at least perhaps more people are coming onto this opinion of people saying, what I wish I'd known when I was 19 and had sex reassignment surgery, because people are starting to recognise the whole problem of detransitioning for people who transition and then realise later on in life, hold up, this isn't what I want, is pretty harrowing and pretty awful for those people. Even at the age of 19, which is where I would say, people are able to make their own decisions without the parents, it's still a very young age to make such drastic changes to your own physical biology. So I think
I've just had an idea for a song you'll be delighted to hear.
I'm
not going to tell you what it is, but I've had a really good idea.
I'll keep an eye out for that one. Thank you for watching, and if you appreciated that segment from the podcast The Lotus Eaters, you can find more content and support us over at lotuseaters.com. For instance, you can find the latest episode of Epochs, episode 49, about the continued Peninsular War, which is done between Bo and Carl. If you'd like to follow us further, you can find us on Getter at lotuseaters_com. Thank you and goodbye.